This is the Meet the Researchers Processes session. And we've got 4 interesting speakers who are going to talk, who are going to reflect on the processes and innovations dedicated to sustainable production, performance, and the preservation of communities. We've got Laura Solomon from the University of Arts London. We've got Lucy Duval from Arts University Bournemouth, Paul Granjon from Cardiff Met, and Afsana Shibani from Queen's University Belfast. Okay, this will run in exactly the same way as the other Meet the Researchers sessions have run. We've got 4 talks over the hour, so I'm going to give 10 minutes for each presentation, and then I'll come back on and open the floor up for questions. And we'll have about 5 minutes of questions and answers before we go on to the next speaker. As before, if you can direct your any questions that you might have to the speakers in the Q&A tab of this session component of the communications tools, we'll make sure that none of those questions are lost into the wider conference chat. Okay, but I will try and pick up questions from the chat and move them into the Q&A if these get overlooked. Okay, right, without further ado, the first speaker that we have is Afsana Shibani from Queen's University Belfast. Welcome.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm from Queen University Belfast. My major media and broadcast from Sonic Art Research. I'm going to present for you my presentation for my PhD. It's under title Towards Uplifting the Importance of Sado, a Weaving Craft Significance in Qatar Heritage. The Sado is a traditional form of weaving in Qatar. So woven Sado is used in the manufacture of carpets for nature, bags, tents, etc. So while Sado is part of the traditional heritage, there is a little focus on actively engaging younger generation, resulting in the risk that this art form will decline. So the aim of this research is to revive the status of Sado weaving in Qatar, where it's currently superficially highlighted and presented on a special official occasion. This research will assess how the tradition can be brought back to the forefront of Qatari heritage for future generations. It will also investigate the best approach to convey this culture to future generations. It will also determine how to make this craft familiar and accessible to young people. So game-based learning will be used to actively engage younger generation. The purpose of using interesting VR game is to preserve the culture of Sado weaving, while at the same time improve student knowledge of the art form and understanding, the incorporation of the various traditional design, such as colors, icons, shape, and models. So students will be guided through the different methods and processes and the technique of weaving in a games setting. Upon completion of the game, a student will be given the opportunity to complete a Sado weave in a real-life setting. The next, so I'm going here. In the other stage, I work with documentary short film under title "Weaving Sado is the Symbol of Qatari Identity." I filmed in 2 places, in Qatar State and in Kuwait. The first one in Souk Waqif, in the center of Doha, capital of Qatar. The film revolves around an Arabic woman who weaves Sado carpet, and the footage begins sequentially from the additional of thread around the Sado loom until the actual weaving. She's a very interested lady. She started long time from Dar al Nama in 1980s, and she found while her journey, she presents her work in and out of Qatar, and also she participated in several expo in Japan and China. And she got that people in Western and Asian people, they like to use this kind of the fabric to learn it more than Qatari people. And she's very sad that she's trying to teach the girl in Qatar. They are just weaving for the intermediate level. They are leaving everything, and they are not interested to continue. I interviewed also with.
Sorry, Afsana. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just checking. I didn't hear you ask me to start the slideshow. Did you want that running already?
Yeah.
Okay,
Documentary
lovely.
short film. Yeah.
Apologies for that.
It's okay. Yeah, this is the.
Just tell me
slide.
when you want this slide go forward.
No, I mean the second slide after this one. Yes, I talk about this introduction and then the other one. Yes, I'm in this stage, which is I spoke about my film that short film documentary was in Souq Waqif in Doha. This part, and I met Suad, and then her daughter that she's interested also to follow her mother to learn the Sadu. Then you can go to the other slide. Yes. So the other part that I work with the people in Sadu House in Kuwait. Sadu weaving is become one of the list of the UNESCO intangible culture heritage for humanity 2020, and still these people, they are growing and they are taking care about this kind of the fabric of Sadu in a real tradition way. They are trying to do the best, even it's ungovernment institute, but they are working very hard. It was a good opportunity for me to meet these people, and I interviewed with Sheikh Altaf Salim Al-Sabah. She's the honorary president of Sadu Society Kuwait, and the other one I interviewed her daughter Sheikh Habibi, the chairperson of the board of director of the Sadu Textile. So cooperative society. Okay, the presentation footage in this stage when I went to the Kuwait, they are teaching and such workshop and several level. They are starting from level 1 to the level 5, in the beginning like intermediate, fundamental and intermediate. I actually learned 2 workshops for 2 levels. It's helped me a lot to understand how I can work with my research, and also interview people in ministry education. They are also taking care about how to introduce this kind of weaving of Sadu and in Kuwait school. It's already done collaborative between Sadu House and Ministry of Education in Kuwait, and they are now teaching intermediate school men and female and male. They are teaching them how to weave the Sadu in intermediate level, and also they have a lot of activities. Still, they are developing themselves, and they got a high rank on an intelligible culture heritage in UNESCO. And I'm going also to continue my work with them also. And I got a lot of references, and they have a lot of old fabric that done maybe more than 60 or 70 years. So I'm going to explain about my methodology. Next is coming. Yes. So my aim for this project is to creating a VR game based on Sadu weaving for players to learn Sadu weaving techniques. So the gameplay story and the e-learning method. It's like 2 things. So the game will guide the player through Sadu, and also the pathway of game teaches Sadu craft. So Sadu thread, different color, weaving, equipment. So as I mentioned that Kuwait, they are taking care about the original of the tradition of the Sadu weaving. So Sadu weaving in Arabian Gulf, such as Qatar and Kuwait, and they are only have unique colors. It's coming between maroon and black and red and white, sometimes yellow for lighting only. Other country arrange, they are focusing on different color like green or blue, depend of the environment. That's you can compare of Sadu traditional from us and other people. And if we will continue our methodology to go to the data collection, that's helped me interviews and observation references. And the data analysis was like it's a VR game and the player's response after gaming. So understanding the impact of VR game based on Sadu and young generation. So if you'll go to the another slide. Yes, so I choose, no, before that, Tom, yes. So the game will focus on the following: player-driven contents, empower the player to tailor the look of the gameplay and world, and also the player empowerment, the player attachments, abilities should make the player feel powerful and traversal challenges. So story-driven gameplay. So gameplay should have narrative relevance and context within a large story framework. The second stage, the second slide, okay. Then I choose my audience, and the player will be between 16 to 18 years. So the game content and challenging should be directed to the target age range, especially this age. They like attractive things, so I have to study this and psychologists how we can create a game that make these people interested to continue and work with weaving Sadu. And the high frequency of reward, the player should be frequently rewarded for immediate and intermediate and long-term challenges. Accessible traversal allow the player to explore the world without outstanding penalties for mistakes. And the second slide, the game element that will be a 180-degree video and 3D animation environment. I'm going to work with my skills in illustration and visual art to merge this one with a 3D environment. And there will be sound, natural sound like wind and yarn when the player stretch the yarn, and each kind of yarn, whether it's wool or hair, camel or goat hair, it has different sound. And in purpose, I put Arabic music, and I want to merge the music with the game while working with each style or kind of the yarn. It has music. For example, the red yarn has a different tone than the black. And also it will be voice in the game, a human voice to guide the player to transfer between levels. So the last slide, yeah. So in the conclusion, the significance of preserving Sadu craft and implement the use of Sadu craft in Qatar drives the major reason for research like this. An effective way of making young people interested in Sadu making is via games. Virtual reality gaming that attract the young generation was proposed to introduce Sadu, and it's important. The history of Qatar includes Sadu, and it's essential to maintain and save the culture and heritage of the country. Therefore, also it's significant to refresh and regain the Sadu weaving culture in the society and encourage the young generation towards Sadu. I hope you enjoyed watching my project, and I'm happy for any question.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Afsana. Really interesting. Really interesting. Right. So, yes, open that up to the floor for questions. Okay, while you're thinking about what you'd like to ask Afsana. I'm quite one thing that I've been interested in a long time is about the transition from the physical and tangible experience of making things, of working with materials like wool, but using our physical senses, and the very different experience, even with high-tech immersive. So I'm always intrigued about how makers like yourself feel about how that experience translates.
Yeah, it will translate with motion capture. We can use it, and several. We are going to test this one. Yes, because in the beginning we plan to make it 2D, and then when while I'm searching in my documentary film, the most people, they are putting the camera on the top or on the front, but you cannot understand the stages of the sequence to weaving the sado. It's very it should be sequentially, and also it should be very clarified to understand.
Okay, so I mean that sort of addresses some of the questions I might have about the three-dimensional and sequencing aspects of it.
Yeah, it's motion capture. Yeah, we choose the motion capture will be this one. Especially we will using the hand.
How can you, with the haptic quality of the experience of making with your hands, how do you address that?
It will be level in game. In the beginning, it will be normal story as the short animation. And then after that, we will go to the levels. Each level, it will be like one process of the concept of how to weave the sado. For example, in the beginning, the player, he should choose which wool or hair animals he want to do, which design he want to do. There is optional for him to choose 2 or 3 design. And there is 2 characters. Actually, the main will be the Sado woman, which you saw in my presentation, and 2 characters, girl and boy. Depend the user, he will choose what he wants. And then after that, he will choose the level 1. As I told you, he will choose the woof that he wants. The second stage is coming process, how to color this wool. And then after that, how to make it yarn. So sequentially, exactly to get to the point, he will stretch this and put the yarn around the loom, and then after that he will, it will be like rewards to get to the point. He will weave the sado exact the same traditional way. Exact. Fantastic. Nothing. I cannot change. No, because sometimes you can put the button just jumping. No, I want him to learn how to weave the sado.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really interesting. And if anybody has any questions later on, that's maybe sometimes they don't occur to you in the moment, but you can get in touch with Afsana through the directory in the People tab on the left-hand navigation, or in the Who's Here on the communication tools. Okay, thank you for that, Afsana. And I'm going to welcome to the stage I'm going to welcome to the stage Laura Solomon next. Laura is a Research and Development Fellow at the Fashion, Textiles and Technology Institute at the University of the Arts, London. And she's going to be talking to us about how about exploring new functionality in the applications of bio-based, non-woven and sustainable materials. Okay, Afsana, if you want to press your leave button in the top corner, I'll refresh stage and that'll take you back into the audience, and I'll bring on Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hello. So today I'm going to talk to you about Ananas Anam and the project I worked with them on to enhance their material called Pinutex. and I was the project lead on this project. So here we have the project team. I was the project lead from UAL. I worked together with Dr. Raquel Prado, who was the company lead from Ananas Anam, and Professor Kate Goldsworthy, who was the R&D academic mentor from UAL. And just to note that this was a BFTT project. So BFTT stands for the Business of Fashion, Textiles and Technology. It was delivered by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and hosted by University of the Arts London. BFTT as a programme aims to support SMEs to implement their R&D into their business models. And Ananas Anam as a company were one of the funded SMEs. And so Pinutex is a non-woven textile made from pineapple leaf fibres. It's a patented material by Ananas Anam. They hold the patent for it. And the application is a sustainable alternative to leather and other synthetic materials. And it's typically used in fashion applications, accessories, automotive, and the upholstery markets. And so for this project, our R&D focus was to look at different ways that we could add functionality and new properties to the Pinutex material to enable us to enter new application areas and add value to the product. And at the start of the project, our plan was to look at the requirements of the defined market sectors and understand how they differed. For example, the fashion industry would need a much lesser strength material compared to the automotive industry. And we also wanted to look at how we could improve the aesthetics and the properties of the material. For example, the substrate uniformity and strength and the material touch and feel. We wanted to identify the sustainable and accessible technologies that we could use to achieve these qualities. The company wanted to enhance their UK's production and supplier network, and we wanted to create a viable plan to scale up the developed processes, because there's no point developing something if it can't be commercialized. And so we started the project by scoping the market and gaining feedback from a variety of brands who had previously worked with Pinutex as a material, to understand how we could best meet customer needs and what properties the customers wanted us to improve of the material. We then scoped the different technologies that could provide these properties according to the customer feedback. We then partnered with brands to produce prototypes with the enhanced material we developed, and then we worked with brands to gain feedback on the enhanced material, and then made a plan for mass scale commercializing the material and scaling up the production. And so the feedback from the market study was that the people wanted an increase in the substrate strength, an increase in the evenness of the material, the crease resistance, the cost reduction, a smoother material underside, increased biodegradability, fire retardancy and water resistance. We decided to prioritize for the project the properties in the top box, because of course you can't do everything in one project, and we decided that the properties in the top box were general for all markets and would allow the Pinutex material to enter lots of new markets, whereas the bottom properties were very specific for certain markets. And with regards to biodegradability, the company was already doing lots of work in this area, so we decided not to focus on it. And so one of the problems with the material that was causing a lot of the reasons for why the customers had given us this feedback was that the non-woven substrate of the material was coming back from the factory quite patchy. You could see on the left-hand side the picture when you held it up to the light, the light was coming through, and that's because in certain areas there was less fibers than others. And this meant that when the coating was coated on top of the substrate, it soaked into the areas where there was less fibers. And this caused problems such as the aesthetic of the material. It looked quite bumpy. It created, where it was soaking in, where the red circles are, it was creating the material to become very stiff. It was causing problem with, for one application, the company used transfer coating, and this was causing problems there. And it was also decreasing the strength of the material, because every place where there was gaps where the fibers should be, it meant that the fabric wasn't as strong, and it created weak points in the material. So after doing lots of research, we decided that instead of just adding a finish or a coating on top to sort of hide the problem, that was essentially adding a band-aid onto the problem, and that we wanted to strip it back and look at the manufacturing process of the material and where the mistakes were being made. And so we decided to audit the current Pinutex manufacturing process and provide the company with recommendations on how they could improve this process to improve mass uniformity, which then in turn would improve the strength and the aesthetic and so on. And then also we wanted to look at the material touch and feeling and drape of the material. And so we decided to explore different finishing methods to enhance these properties. And so here you can see a map of how the project sort of went. The properties on the left-hand side, the cost reduction, the strength, the evenness, crease resistance, and touch and feeling and drape. As you can see, we explored lots of different technologies to try to achieve this. And we focused on looking at the non-woven process optimization of the manufacturing process. And we worked with a consultancy company called NIRI on that project. And they audited our manufacturing process. And then we provided the company with recommendations, and they implemented it, and they're still using that's what they're doing now for their production of their process. And then for the touch and the feeling and the drape, the crease resistance, as you can see, the arrows of the properties, they go to lots of different areas. And so for the touch, feeling, the drape, but also this also affected the non-woven process optimization, for example. But for that, we decided to work with University of Northampton to look at traditional finishing technologies that are typically used within the leather industry. And so both of these were the routes we decided to take, and they were taken right the way through to optimization and prototyping stage and implementation. And so here you can see on the left-hand side, we have the earlier batches of the material that were quite patchy when they were held up to the light. And this was what the material looked like when we first started the project. And whereas on the right-hand side, batch F12, that was the most recent batch at the end of the project. And you can see we really increased the quality of the product. And so after successfully optimizing the material, we then manufactured, we ran a trial to manufacture 20 meters of the Pinutex that had enhanced softness, enhanced hand feel, better homogeneity, evenness of the material. And we used this 20 meters to send to our brand partners to validate the material during prototyping. And our brand partners were Mashu, Luxtra, Nyvegan, and Eva Habanakova. All of these fashion brands have a past experience with Pinutex and work with Pinutex already, so they could tell us whether they noticed they were a good judge and if there was a difference in the properties. Our main aim for making these prototypes was to receive feedback on how it was to work with the newer material, and if they thought that the drape and the softness and the hand feel had been increased, because these are quite subjective properties. And so here you can see some of the prototypes that we developed during the project. And I've put some quotes underneath from our brand validators. And you can see that they all said that it had a very different feeling compared to the original Piñatex. It was much softer to the touch. They said that the creases were wider and the texture seemed different. They said that they were much happier working with the new material compared to the original, and it was much easier to work with. And they also said that it had an increased drape, and it was much more flexible to work with. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. Anybody is welcome to ask any questions they have.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Laura. And it may well be that you have to fend off questions from me again. While we wait for questions from the floor. But while I was listening to that, one of the things that I was quite intrigued by is this notion of non-woven fabrics. I think we're seeing more and more of that as people explore ways of recycling and sustainability, and using other, vegetable products or whatever and the mushroom fabrics, mushroom leather and things. It's all, there's a non-woven component approach to the fabric, which translates into the aesthetic. So I'd be interested to know what I know you've been looking at production, but I'm also interested in what you think the non-woven can enable in terms of in sort of creative potential. What we can do with non-fabric that maybe you can't do. As soon as you're adding in different finishes that change the texture, change the rigidity. What does that open up in terms of opportunities for fashion aesthetic?
So non-woven materials have actually been around for years and years. They are used in lots of hygiene applications and building, construction fabrics. For example, carpet is non-woven, or non-hygienic wipes, that sort of thing. But yeah, more recently, it's becoming a bit more. Traditionally, non-woven materials weren't really used in fashion because of the drape of the material. They don't really drape very well. They're quite stiff. Yeah, I think now people are sort of different companies are trying to change the rules really with what you can do with non-woven materials, and look at different ways to finish it, to soften it, and just like we did in this project, so it can be used for fashion applications. Definitely for the sort of vegan leather market, it's being used a lot there. And yeah, it's definitely a different aesthetic to traditional woven fabrics, but maybe it's the aesthetic that is desired. Who knows, depending on the application.
So do we have to say a thank you to programs like Project Runway or whatever, and their unconventional materials challenges that have opened up the doors to this and sort of increasing acceptance? Exactly. Right, we're actually running slightly over, so I'm not going to. I see a question in there. I will, if there's a question, I'm on it. So it's Poppy Banks who's asking, how will your work affect the cost of items for the consumer?
So it did actually. This is actually something I didn't mention. It did. The project did reduce the cost of the material because. Through auditing the manufacturing process, we managed to be much more efficient on the amount of fibers that were being used during the manufacturing. So you need less amount of fibers to produce the same square meter of the material, which meant that the cost of the material could be reduced. Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. As before, get in touch with Laura if you've got any questions that occur to you later on. But in the meantime, I'll just thank you and clear the stage ready for our next speaker, who's Lucy Duval. And as well as a PhD design student at Imagination Lancaster, Lucy is also innovation manager at Arts University Bournemouth, and we'll be talking about how she is applying aspects from her PhD research around innovation ecologies to her work at Bournemouth. Okay, Lucy, would you like to come onto the stage and tell us all about it.
Okay, hello. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, hopefully. So, oh, hang on. So hopefully you can see this. This is my poster that I've had up at the Beyond conference this week. So hello, I'm Lucy. As well as being the Innovation Manager at Arts University Bournemouth, which is a specialist arts university in Dorset, I'm also a PhD student at Imagination Lancaster. In this talk on innovation ecosystems and the roles of a creative arts university, I'll be discussing a case study of a research project I've been undertaking with colleagues at AUB, to which I've applied my own research questions around the concept of innovation ecosystems. Over the course of this conference, I've heard the term innovation ecosystem threaded into conversation. Its attributes mirror how we might describe our organic world, so it fits well into discourse around zero carbon futures. Like our natural ecosystems, it's the relationship between seemingly distinct types of actors that sparks my interest as a researcher. But unlike the concept of national innovation systems, for example, the roles of an innovation ecosystem actor are not predefined. As such, there are always questions to be asked about the roles we play as organisations, institutions, communities and businesses within this construct. So, to the context of this poster. This project consists of several key actors stretching from Dorset in the UK to Stone Town in Zanzibar, Tanzania, two countries with incredibly different systems of innovation. If you're not familiar with Zanzibar, it's a beautiful archipelago off the coast of Tanzania in East Africa. It's this setting, whilst incredibly rich in natural resources, that sets it into the frame for drowning prevention studies. To give you some context to the scale of the wicked problem of drowning, the World Health Organization states that around 90% of the world's drowning burden affects people living in low and middle income countries, such as Tanzania. This is a staggering figure which occurs where infrastructure to mitigate against accidental drowning is underdeveloped and systems of governance battle with hard to reach communities. Those at highest risk of drowning are children aged 0 to 5 years old and men working in the fishing industries. Within Zanzibar, there's a high number of workers in fishing, where studies by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, in collaboration with the RNLI, have shown minimal access to drowning prevention resources, as well as a pattern of resistance to the uptake of buoyancy equipment, due in part to cultural and economic factors. In response to this, the RNLI's international team has been working with in-country partners across pilot areas in Bangladesh and Tanzania to develop capacity building programs for drowning prevention. One of these initiatives is the development of locally sourced, low-volume, low-cost rescue throw lines, which have been co-designed to perform tasks that meet ISO equivalent standards, so International Organization for Standardization. In my role as Innovation Manager, the RNLI approached me in 2019, or approached the university via me, to collaborate on developing a set of open source, what they term open source, video tools that would help people across the world translate and follow printed manual instructions on how to make these low-cost throw lines for their own communities. The throw line designs were innovative, nothing quite like them had existed before. The manual was also the work of the design team, product engineers who had passed it over to the graphic design team to turn into instructions, who had in turn handed it over to the legal team. So all 42 pages of the community manuals for these low resource environments ended up on my desk, one in English and one in Swahili. So more on this bit in a moment. As universities, how we produce and transfer knowledge is a critical part of our operations. In the case of university to business relationships, our strongest ties are often perceived to be the consumers of our knowledge, whether for graduate skills or consultancy. Our role within a national innovation system is therefore largely assigned to something akin to knowledge transfer partner. But what might the differences be if we examined our role through the creative process? Would it be the same? Could the value be measured in the same way? AUB is a self-styled maker institute rather than a design institute. It's this creative difference that transformed our role in the Drowning Project from one of supplier to the RNLI, a brief knowledge transfer partnership, if you like, to a more embedded knowledge exchange or even creative exchange partner in Zanzibar. In this case, the technical team in the fashion department, whose desks the manuals landed on, and who I had asked to try and produce a few prototypes from this, came back to me with a list of reasons why the manuals were not coherent from their perspective. As highly experienced soft goods makers, their prototypes had missed several safety critical features of the product. This, of course, was an issue, and we raised the question with the RNLI as to how the manuals in their current state might be interpreted by makers who had very similar skills to ours, but would be using these in an open source way in different settings without the surrounding context of what we have in our innovation system. Indeed, the skills needed to make the product were not the problem. How you make when you're using technical sewing machines is a process-driven activity. It was the coding the performance of this into a manual to be interpreted in a completely different setting without any safety critical errors appearing that raised concern. So this became the problem. Or to paraphrase Latour and Ackrich, there was a problem with the semiotics of the assembly. So to respond to this problem and to improve our collective understanding of the local innovation systems in Zanzibar, my team and I reached out to a tailoring school in Stone Town called Pamoja. As an organisation, Pamoja runs several vocational training programmes and services for the wider Zanzibar community. One of these is a tailoring school, a common and visible part of the work, a tailoring training, a common and visible part of the workforce across the island and mainland. Pamoja tailors use sewing machines much like the setup of teaching at AUB and is run by head tailor Josephina, who you can see in the bottom picture of this poster. Like AUB, Pamoja is a maker institute. Its teaching processes and maker skills more similarly mirror AUB's in terms of its facilities and staffing. Therefore, its performance was familiar to us. Since 2019, when we reached out to Pamoja, we've run several participatory workshop projects with their tailoring cohort, funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, to investigate how makers use and interpret manuals. The findings from these have resulted in a number of outputs, some of which are listed here. So these include a set of new simplified throwline manuals for makers, which can be open source and are up on the RNLI's, the Royal National Lifeboat Institute's website, and a recording of a workflow process created through participatory methods led by Associate Professor Dr. Emma Shercliffe, a colleague who I work with on the project, a textiles and participatory making specialist at AUB. There was also the added layer of 2 years of this project being conducted over Skype and WhatsApp due to the pandemic, as opposed to in-field research, in-country research that we had been doing around it. This has led to several incremental steps in the impact towards drowning prevention. The first being a change in RNLI's framing of the making process in their work with communities in Tanzania and Bangladesh, much of which comes from the informal economy in low-resource manufacturing settings. This has led to an increase in women participating in the process of innovation for drowning prevention. Previously, studies had been dominated by men in their roles as fishermen, community leaders, and so forth. And although not directly related to our work, the RNLI and its partner, the World Health Organization, were successful in April 2021 in getting directly ratified into the United Nations goals drowning prevention. So for the very first time, it's now a global commitment. So back to our role as a creative arts university, this has been largely down to the strength of our ties and the duration of our ties in the relationships that we've formed. We've been a supplier to the RNLI, an innovation scout, a workshop facilitator, a business partner, and a traditional university in the sense through the dissemination of our activities and outputs. Our strongest and longest lasting ties, however, have come through the partners we've undertaken the creative process with, such as Pamoja. It's these strong ties which we're seeing a reciprocal relation of trust and a transformation in how participation is enacted. We found common ground with communities thousands of miles away through our shared understanding of the performance of making. And although the status and needs of our receptive national innovation systems might differ considerably, we have been able to evolve a more sustainable innovation ecosystem through creative practice. Finally, what helps me as a researcher make sense of this role, or our roles in the innovation system concept, is to speculate what the process might look like without us in it. Our role in the project is not to be a permanent investor. It's to help build the capabilities of Pamoja and partners and institutes similar to it, so that drowning prevention capacity can develop. Another type of university, for instance, might not have approached the project in the same way. The design process may have been entirely different. The making process might have approached the process with a different set of technical competencies in mind and values, leading to alternative pathways of development or an outright rejection of the process altogether. So as it stands, we continue to be a part of this international innovation ecosystem, still in its infancy, I might add, and have ambitions to continue the work we've started, hopefully with other research partners, perhaps from the social sciences, anybody listening. So if you're interested, please do get in touch. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Lucy. Just while we wait and give people a chance to come up with questions, you said there, I mean, such an interesting project, and I get that it's still at early stages. But what are your concrete plans for a next stage, if indeed you have those?
So it really touches on the workflow process that's been developed over the last year. The manuals really were kind of quite a transactional activity that began with the RNLI. So they'd requested that we had helped them improve their open source tools for making these rescue throw lines. But it's the actual workflow process that interested us and has been of value to Pamoja, the organization in Zanzibar that can make these throw lines. And it's tailors who are really often working in the informal economy and then learn and improve their tailoring skills at Pamoja. So it's the workflow process that we're really trying to look at now, and how that might be encapsulated in a tool or a set of tools that can be shared more widely across the community, but also in other communities in mainland Tanzania, in Bangladesh, and so on. Absolutely.
Once you've got a tangible tool, then you can share it in different contexts and get input from wider audiences. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Lucy. That was really, really interesting, really insightful. Okay. I'll thank you. If you just want to stop sharing your screen, then I'll introduce our final speaker from the Meet the Researchers series today. And this is Paul Grandjean from the, in addition to his role as Senior Lecturer in Fine Art at Cardiff Met, Paul is also currently doing his practice-based PhD titled Robotic Art as a Vector for Technocritique. And he's going to be talking to us a little bit about his practice exploring the co-evolution of humans and machines, and how he imagines solutions for alternative sustainable futures. So without further ado, welcome, Paul.
Hello. Okay, well, nice intro, Tom. Okay, well, let's get cracking. Got about 12 minutes to go. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk tonight of a specific project called Power of the Mud, where I've been looking into microbial fuel cells, which are batteries powered by mud and the bacteria in the mud, as a source of power for robotic arts and other creative technology applications. So as Tom mentioned, I am a visual artist, and actually I've just completed my PhD in robotic art in July. And I am interested in making machines that raise questions about our use of technology, and also make extensive use of recycled material and sustainable energy sources. So this led me to the world of microbial fuel cells, which are batteries that operate using the property of certain bacteria to digest material, and as a result of the digestive process of bacteria, an electron is emitted, which can be harvested. Here we got a diagram of a typical microbial fuel cell. I will not go too far in the science, but let's say that the bacteria generate the electron, which are collected at the anode, the plus side of the circuit, sent through whichever electronic circuitry you want to power with that, and then it goes back to the minus side of the battery and the cycle starts again. The currents that can be generated by this technology are very low, and this is a shot of early experiments with microbial fuel cells with my friend Mishka Melo, who's a bioengineer. He's the one who talked me first about this technology, and we ran various sessions in this one. This is the Fab Lab in Cardiff Metropolitan, where we made our first prototypes. One of the issues with microbial fuel cells is how do you collect the electricity made by the bacteria, and you will need a small electric circuit called a harvester, and this is one of the harvesters we've been using. So this is called the Mudwatt harvester, and I will come back to that in a minute. So we made this set of batteries which generated enough current to make the little LEDs on top blink on and off for a number of weeks without interruption. And then coming with my visual art hat on, I started to think about what these batteries could look like and how they could be integrated into robotic artworks. And I made a series of battery containers using clay. I thought it was quite a nice idea to conceptually to make clay containers for mud batteries, like having a fully muddy object. And once fired, these look a bit like this. And as mentioned in the title, I'm trying to be open source. I'm trying to use off-the-shelf materials for making these batteries. And in that case, I'm using kitchen scourer as the material